This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. So one of the biggest conversation points for the Cleveland Browns this offseason has obviously been the quarterback competition, and one of the members of that quarterback competition is Shedeur Sanders. And there's been a lot of opinion about what his rookie year was, what his rookie year wasn't, and something I've been doing on the channel recently is reacting to other people's videos, other people's takes, other content creators' stuff to kind of discuss it here on this channel through the lens of somebody who deeply does care about the Cleveland Browns and them being successful. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to watch Brandon Perna from That's Good Sports' video about Shedeur. He did this a while ago. It's been popping up in my For You page for a long time. YouTube really wanted to make me watch this video. So if YouTube's trying to make me watch this video, I'll watch it with you guys. But we're going to watch Brandon Perna's video. How bad was Shedeur's rookie year? Really react to that, have some fun. But before I get into that, got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 sports pick app. The app is really easy to use for player picks. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. That's it. Rather just pick teams, PrizePicks has that now too. Just pick the winner, spread, or total in any game or fight. PrizePicks is available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. Plus, you can even follow me on the app at Quen_C. Tell my picks, one click, and follow your friends too. Best of all, play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups if you win. Just use the promo code HMA when you sign up. That's right. PrizePicks just switched up their offer, so there's no better time to join. Lock in and win with that first lineup. That's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win with your first $5 or up lineup. All right, so let's hear what Brandon Perna has to say about Shedeur Sanders, what his takes are. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of Deshaun Watson jokes in this one. Let's jump into it.
We don't need you, bro. We don't need you.
Oh, you a...
Hey, man, stop it.
The Cleveland Browns finished the 2025 season with a 5-.
Was that edited? Was that an edited clip? I think that's edited. I remember watching that mic'd up. I don't remember seeing something that was that strange. I feel like somebody edited that. That's crazy.
Of record. They had 5 QBs on their roster in the preseason. Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and Tyler Huntley. Oh yeah, and Deshaun Watson was on IR. That's 4 Pro Bowlers and an alleged sex offender in one quarterback room, by the way. Shedeur Sanders was the biggest story of the entire 2025 NFL offseason because he inexplicably fell from a possible top 5 draft pick to a 5th-round selection by the Cleveland Browns, who drafted Oregon QB Dylan Gabriel 50 picks ahead of him. We've really never seen a draft slide like that.
The Browns are hilarious because they position themselves to be like the main talking point. Like Dylan Gabriel, before Shedeur got drafted, was the quarterback that everybody pointed to and was like, oh my God, I can't believe Dylan Gabriel just got drafted before Shedeur Sanders, right? And then the Browns took Shedeur Sanders, which made everything like extra complicated. But like that's only something that like Andrew Berry would do for better or worse, right? It's the value maxing of Andrew Berry that he would take 2 quarterbacks and take the quarterback that people criticized him for taking ahead of the quarterback that he should have taken and then coming back and taking that quarterback. It's only Andrew Berry would do that. The other interesting thing, whenever people talk about Shedeur's slide, the slide from being a top 5 pick was not real, right? The hype about Shedeur as a top 5 pick was never real, right? I talked about this before the draft slide even happened on this channel because I had Shedeur as my QB1. I wasn't a big fan of Cam Ward, but you knew that Cam Ward was going to go #1 overall. before the draft. The Titans had made that very, very clear that was going to happen. But Shedeur, a lot of people had been convinced that he was going to go in the top 10. And I remember making the point that maybe he goes in the 20s, but I really wouldn't be surprised if he's around at the start of the second round, because that's about prospect wise where he was. You know what I mean? So it's interesting when people bring up the slide. The slide from the first round to the second round wasn't a slide, in my opinion. That was actual approximate value for Shedeur. I thought there was a chance maybe he could go to Pittsburgh, but late first, early second is about where I always saw him. The slide from day 2 to day 3 is the more interesting conversation. It's hey, what happened for this guy who's graded around second, third round to fall completely out of day 2 and all the way into day 3, which does happen a lot. We just saw that this year with Garrett Nussmeier, where Garrett Nussmeier was a fringe day 2 pick in a lot of people's eyes and fell all the way to the late 7th round pick. So, I think the media hype about him that was not accurate about him being a top 5 pick is why this story got so big, because people did genuinely believe that he was going to be a top 5 pick. But if you've been paying attention, that was never going to happen. And it was pretty clear that he wasn't going to be a top 5 pick. But because Mel Kiper put it on the board, right, it becomes this big story and balloons into this big story.
Statistically speaking, Shedeur Sanders' 2025 rookie season was a nightmare. He finished with 1,400 passing yards, not terrible for 7 starts, a surprising 3-4 record, but threw 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and was sacked 23 times. His sack percentage of 9.79 was 4th worst in the league, behind Geno Smith, Lamar Jackson, and J.J. McCarthy. He only fumbled twice in those 7 starts, losing just 1. His interception percentage was 2nd worst in the league at 4.7%, behind J.J. McCarthy. His yards per attempt were 6.66.
This the devil.
It really is, Shedeur. His successful passing rate was a league worst 34.5%. And if you look at any EPA graph or whatever, he's down at the bottom left corner, the place no quarterback ever wants to be. You might want to stop watching after I just...
So Shedeur's stats were not great his rookie year. This is something that if you want to have a positive outlook on Shedeur, you do have to contend with, right? And I think sometimes, a lot of times, Shedeur's biggest fans don't want to acknowledge the reality that the numbers were straight up bad, right? The advanced metrics, the basic numbers, they were not what people think of in their head when they think of Shedeur, or at least his fans think of him, right? Which runs counter to the narrative of what people have been pushing with Shedeur. I think the truth in his stats from last year is that some of that can be my concern about those numbers that he put up, right? Is that I'm confident he can improve them. There's no doubt in my mind that he's not going to have an 18.2 QBR. That's nuts low. He's going to have better metrics than he kind of EPA metrics and success rate metrics. Those should be better. Some of that was because he did not have a ton around him. The situation wasn't the greatest. I think there is some leeway that you give there. But is that enough to make the leap from where he was to jumping all the way to franchise starter? I don't think we're there yet. I think there are a lot of steps in between that he needs to get to before we have those kind of conversations about him. There's talent there with him. I think you can see that when you watch him play. But just because a player has talent doesn't mean they're always going to be able to convert that into success in the way that they need it to be converted. I think that's going to be the task for Shedeur.
Bit more complicated to evaluate because he played quarterback in Cleveland, We have to keep that in mind. Think of QBing the Browns as golfing with a really high handicap, or that we have to grade on a steep curve. The kind of curve Myles Garrett will get ticketed for speeding through. Ah, fuck, Shedeur too, right? Let's just call Shedeur Sanders the Myles Garrett of QBs and let people figure out what that means on their own.
He now owes $269 in fines and fees.
I just don't get it. I don't get why people, and like, it's not just athletes, it's not just Myles, it's not just Shedeur. So many people are so okay not just risking their own lives when they have so much to lose, but putting other people's entire families at risk in expense for like their own couple of seconds of joy. Like the way my dad explained driving to me, he was like, you want to be good at this and you want to be safe at this because one day you're going to have your spouse in this car, you're going to have your children in this car, you're going to have everybody on earth that you would die for in this car. And you don't want to be the reason why they're not here anymore because you want it to be irresponsible or you want it to be, nonchalant or not safe. You know what I mean? And to think about the idea of potentially destroying somebody's that because you want it to go fast. Like you go 200 miles per hour, you make a mistake, you hit a pothole or something, your car goes out of control and boom, you take out another car. And in that car, that's somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's dad, mom, somebody's daughter, kid. You know what I mean? Like you take out somebody's entire family. Like, could you live with that? So why risk it? You know what I mean? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm sure there's excuses to do it, but bad habits have the best excuses. You know what I mean? You ask a drug addict why he likes to do crack, I bet he rattle off a lot of good reasons in his mind or her mind for doing crack. It don't make crack acceptable. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure, people will get mad at me about this section of the video and want to tell me why it's actually cool to drive recklessly or whatever it is and why I'm making too much of a deal out of it. But, bad habits have good excuses. That's why they exist. If bad habits didn't have good excuses, people wouldn't do that dumb shit. But there's a reason people do it, and it's because they find good excuses to, justify it in their head why that behavior is okay when logically it's pretty clear that it's just not worth the risk.
Shedeur made some NIL money to pay for those. If you're still watching, let me ask you this. Do you know who else sucked behind that bad and decimated Browns offensive line? Joe Flacco. Before the Browns traded Flacco to the Bengals, he was completing just 58% of his passes. He had thrown just 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and had a 1-3 record. His wins did not improve in Cincinnati, but that's because their defense was a fantasy hoping to be brought to life at a later date. Behind an improved offensive line and with real weapons to catch the football, Flacco fired 13 TDs to just 4 picks, and his completion percentage was close to 62. He went from averaging 5.1 yards per pass to 6.5. I love that we have a seasoned veteran who left after 4 games to use as a gauge for Shedeur Sanders and even Dillon Gabriel. It really helps establish how terrible the Browns offense was and that you can't only point to the QB. And don't get me wrong, none of them were good. None of them. What you can confirm is what Sanders' glaring weaknesses are by looking at all of this, which I'm going to do. Dillon.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? The Browns supporting cast was not great last year. And Joe Flacco did go from that supporting cast to a much better supporting cast in Cincinnati, and he played much better football. Now, some of that is because Joe Flacco has kind of always been an inconsistent quarterback. He's been streaky at different points of his career, right? Like a 4-game hot streak for Joe Flacco and a 4-game cold streak, not really unheard of but that doesn't explain the entire difference, right? Part of that difference, a huge part of it, is he was throwing to Jamar Chase instead of Jerry Jeudy. He had a better offensive line and probably a better structure of an offense, right, for him with Zach Taylor running the show down there in Cincinnati than what Kevin was trying to cook up here in Cleveland. So, again, there are reasons to believe that these numbers for Shedeur are going to improve, and I'm confident that they're going to improve, right? He's not going to have those bad advanced metrics again. They're going to get better. The QBR is going to go and not be 18.6, right? But does it improve from 18 QBR to a 70? I don't know if we make that jump, right? Do the advanced metrics go from him being like 64 out of 70 eligible quarterbacks to 13? Probably not. We're probably talking about going from 64 to maybe 38, which is a significant jump. But there's a reason for an improvement. There'll probably be an improvement. The question is, how big can we assume that improvement to be? So, yeah, I think because the supporting cast is better, there's going to be an improvement for Shedeur this year. Same goes with Dillon Gabriel, right? The question is, how significant is that improvement? You know, that's going to really determine everything.
Gave him the Browns playbook for the first time ever at halftime of that game. Now, Shedeur's first start came against the lowly Raiders, a 24-10 victory for the Browns. Despite completing just 55% of his passes, this was one of Shedeur's better games. It was an electric game for multiple Browns rookies. Quincy Judkins rushed for 2 TDs. Tight end Harold Fannin was a rumbling and stumbling for yak on this screen pass. Shedeur was getting help on offense, and in the face of pressure, he rolled to his right and probably completed one of the best deep balls of his rookie season. For all of his flaws, it's plays like this that give you hope he can develop into a decent NFL QB. That playmaking ability was what felt missing from Dillon Gabriel's game. And yes, that was another rookie, Isaiah Bond, making the clutch grab near the goal line. He also threw a pretty unforgivable interception later in the second quarter. Even if he had Josh Allen's arm strength and Aaron Rodgers' accuracy, I don't think he's sneaking the ball through that coverage. Shedeur was starting to...
Yeah, there are moments where you watch Shedeur play and you're like, wow, if we can just get him to get the basics down, you know, play on rhythm, play on time, if we can get just that part of his game working, there is that part to his game where he can roll out and create that gives him that extra that could put him over the top. It's not impossible to see a world where he can become a starting quarterback. I think the question is, what needs to change in his game and how long does that take to develop, right? When people compare him to Geno Smith, I don't think people go far enough with what that comp means, right? Because Geno Smith was somebody who obviously had something, showed that he had something early in his career, but he could never put it all together consistently enough to play winning football. So that kept him on the bench, and it kept him opportunity-less for a while. Then when he reemerged with the Seattle Seahawks, he demonstrated that he could do the more expected stuff from a quarterback much better, right? He can operate and play with a lot better patience than what he was, and with better presence in the pocket, and he wasn't going to be super flighty. And then every once in a while, he can get out there and make some big-time plays. And for a couple of years, Geno Smith looked like a true, real franchise quarterback. I think that's possible for Shedeur, but look at how long it took Geno Smith to get there, right? That kind of tells you what the baseline is for developing the kind of skills that Shedeur needs to develop, because what we're talking about, I think, from what I watch of Shedeur, is a rewriting of how he plays the game of football. And that's not going to happen overnight. So that's my big thing is yeah, there could be a quarterback in there with Shedeur, but is that going to be something that happens in a year or two, or 4 or 5 years from now, or 7 years from now? That's the question for me.
Buying time and finding a wide open Jerry Jeudy, who instantly betrayed him with what was probably the dumbest fumble of the season. Dylan Sampson padded Sanders' final stat line of 209 passing yards when he housed a 46-yard screen pass. On the other side, Raiders quarterback Geno Smith was sacked 10 times in that game. Not that it was really all Geno's fault, but Shedeur looked as competent as Geno, if not more so, which is fitting because I think Sanders will have to sit in the league for a while before he's in the right spot to succeed like Geno Smith. The Browns would lose the next...
I promise you I didn't pre-watch the video. I promise you I did it. Oh, man.
4 games in a row with Sanders starting. 3 of those losses came to tough playoff teams, the 49ers, the Bears, and the Bills. Shedeur's worst game in that stretch was against Chicago. The Browns scored just 3 points in that game. Sanders threw 3 interceptions, completing just 51% of his passes. I think Cleveland converted just 1 third down in the entire first half. The Bears' defense, while opportunistic in 2025, was bottom 5 in yards allowed and bottom 10 in points allowed, and the Browns' offense couldn't capitalize on any of that. Sanders' dog shit performance noted. He did flash a couple throws again in this game, a perfectly thrown deep ball to Bond, who likes his ball shaken, not coddled on 3rd and 10. Here's where Shedeur's big flaw starts to show, though. Following that amazing pass deep, he found himself in a 3rd and 8. He initially had a clean pocket, and a decisive or experienced quarterback gets rid of the ball at the top of that drop. The Browns' shitty line, though, completely misses a rusher, so Sanders is under pressure after that initial clean set. I think the missed block prevents him from being able to climb the pocket to avoid the pressure, but he's also not quick enough to escape by backing out of the pressure, and then he also fumbles the ball on top of the sack. His decision-making just needs to speed up exponentially. I do believe he might have a chance behind a truly great offensive line. 2 of the 3 picks in that game, definitely Sanders' fault. The second one, though, is an example as to why we need wide receiver interception stats.
Ooh, boy, Jerry Jeudy, man. I understand why them Sanders people don't like you. My goodness. It's been a minute since I've watched what Jerry Jeudy did that season, but sometimes I am reminded, I'm like, yeah, they got a legitimate beef. Like the fumble against the Raiders where he just fumbles the ball for no reason, that, yeah, I get why they got a beef with you, man. Like, you just got to live with that. I can't blame them for feeling a certain type of way about you, dog. Like, that's, yeah. That does, some of this stuff is so bad that it does look like sabotage, but I don't think it's that. I just think Jerry Jeudy's like a weird player. But Brandon Perner makes the point here that he thinks one of the things that Shedeur needs to do is like speed up his processing. And that sounds easy to suggest on paper. You need to think faster. You need to process this stuff faster. Is an easy criticism to give, but it is the hardest thing to actually fix. Like, think about that. Think about if you're just like washing the dishes or just doing something that you do in your normal life. And then somebody taps you on the shoulder and is like, hey, you need to think about all of this stuff way faster and way more efficiently. And you need to think about it way more thoroughly. You're like, what? How do you even go about doing that, right? Obviously, he could get better at like rote memorization so he can knock some of these things out before he gets there. Honestly, it's something that you can't really suggest solutions for over the internet. You have to really understand how Shedeur thinks about the game and what is bloat in that process versus what's not bloat in that process. But simply speeding up that progression speed, that's the most difficult skill to level up if you're a quarterback. And it's why when I watch college tape, I get excited about fast processors, because guys who can do that and have a prerequisite amount of arm strength, which like some people will claim that Dylan Gabriel is a fast processor, but no arm strength there, right? So not an access to a regular amount of pro throws, so it doesn't really matter how fast he processes. Guys who have good arm talent and can process quickly, those are guys who have a better chance to be successful because that is a good chunk of the difficult work there to get better.
What stood out to me is that Shedeur is very good on designed rollouts when he has room or when play action is effective. He actually tossed a really nice screen pass under pressure. Unrelated, but this game also had one of the loudest doinks of the season.
Missing an extra point. Oh!
So, how bad?
The question is, can you build an offense from that, right? Like, there are things that Shedeur does well. I think he needs to expand what he can do well a bit more because what he does well is just not enough to build an offense around that's going to be able to consistently win games, right? And I hope to see that in training camp this year, in the preseason this year, that he's expanding that range of what he can do well, right? He needs to be able to win from the pocket. He needs to be able to win multiple different ways from the pocket. He needs to be a threat in there. He can't just be a threat when he rolls out. We've seen that before where guys can have success in Cleveland when they're playing a little out of structure, and then teams figure that out. They squeeze it down, and then they force him to win in the pocket, and then it becomes a disaster, right? So definitely need Shedeur to add that element to his game.
Shedeur his rookie season. Compared to Joe Flacco and Dillon Gabriel, he was similarly bad, just in different ways. The one thing he had more success doing than those two QBs was winning. He got 3 to Flacco and Gabriel's 1 win each. Like most rookies, he needs to clean up the ill-advised throws. J.J. McCarthy, again, was the only quarterback with a higher interception percentage. Sanders had the lowest passer rating in the league, but Flacco was 3rd worst by season's end. Sack percentage, he was bottom 5. I think it's hard to say how good any quarterback, though, is in Cleveland, and that has sadly been true for 26 years. It's like being asked to drive a semi-truck from New York City to L.A. drunk, and with no stops and no breaks. You have to really watch his games to see Shedeur's strengths. They are hidden. Unfortunately, when you watch, the flaws stand out just as much. He performed pretty well when the run game was at least average. That sets up his rollouts and his bootlegs. He's effective on the screens. And with a clean pocket, he has good deep ball accuracy. It's just a little inconsistent when the pressure arrives. Dillon Gabriel tried to combat a bad O-line with quick short passes. Shedeur tries to extend plays without elite athleticism. The Browns have undergone a complete haul of their offensive line. I think Shedeur can be serviceable if he has reliable protection. Conversely, he has the furthest to go of any QB in terms of getting rid of the ball. Well, except for maybe Caleb Williams, but they're two different guys. Shedeur's not going to elevate a bad roster, and I really don't think he is close to where he needs to be in reading defenses. Quick decisions in the intermediate passing game, that is what will make or break Shedeur Sanders' career. That I feel pretty good about. Sanders was actually top 10 in explosive plays in 2025. I think explosive plays are his hidden strength. He did that with the 7th worst supporting cast in NFL history, if you buy this stat, which I think is a Jerry Jeudy stat. I think he was quietly developing chemistry with some of the rookie skill players. If the Browns were dubbed the worst landing spot for quarterback Malik Willis, I think we owe it to Sanders to see what Cleveland can do with new head coach Todd Monken and hopefully a better offensive line. Also hidden was Sanders' EPA, tied for 2nd best among rookies when blitzed, which had to be almost every play in Cleveland, right? Or at least it felt like he was getting blitzed every play.
No, they weren't blitzing in Cleveland. The Browns' offensive line was terrible, so they didn't have to blitz. So that's Brandon Perna's take on Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur is a tricky one, right? Everything you say about Shedeur Sanders is true. Everything that people say negative about him and what he did in 2025 is true. Everything that people tend to say about him and his skill set positively is true. Is Shedeur Sanders showing potential of being a high-level explosive play guy? Yeah, there's certainly some potential there. Did Shedeur Sanders turn the ball over at a normally high rate? Yeah, there's definitely evidence of that they being there too. Was Shedeur Sanders surrounded by some of the worst supporting cast a quarterback can be surrounded by? Yeah, that definitely was a factor. But is that supporting cast enough of a reason to justify the depths that his numbers sunk to? And does that mean that without that supporting cast being that bad, he's going to magically be this franchise quarterback? I think that's a hard jump to get to, right? He's a tough evaluation. I'm excited to see what he can do this year as far as his production and his efficiency goes. I think there are some areas, some less flashy parts of his game that he needs to improve and get better at. I think I've said it before, but the discipline, right, when going through his progressions, the discipline when staying in the pocket, the discipline overall to how he sees the game, it needs to be much stronger than it is now if he wants to continue to get reps on the field at this point of his career. And my worry is that it's just not going to be there yet. But that's what the season is for. That's what training camp is for, so we can actually see if these things that we speculate on are going to happen or not. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.